So imagine taking a skyscraper, basically the size of the Burj Khalifa, right?
All right.
And turning it completely upside down, and then just burying it into the solid limestone bedrock beneath the Egyptian desert.
Wow. Yeah, that's an intense image.
Right. And now imagine discovering that it's there without ever, actually picking up a single shovel.
I mean, it sounds like a scenario pulled straight out of a science fiction storyboard.
Totally.
But that is literally the magnitude of the claim sitting at the center of the sources you brought us for today's deep dive.
Yeah.
We're looking at this highly controversial investigation from an independent site called Astra Obscura. And they're basically analyzing an announcement that, well, it sent absolute shockwaves through both the archaeological and technological communities back in March of 2025.
It really did. And, along with their investigative reports, you handed us these three incredibly detailed, almost architectural schematics of the Giza Plateau.
Yeah, specifically zeroing in on the area around the Khafre Pyramid, right?
Exactly. So our mission today is to just kind of carefully unpack these claims because you've got this team of Italian and Scottish researchers who stepped in front of the press and just announced, hey, we mapped a sprawling, completely unexcavated underground complex beneath the sands of Giza.
And they did it utilizing satellite radar data from space.
Which is just, how do we even begin to evaluate claims that sound like the plot of a sci-fi blockbuster without, completely losing our scientific grounding?
Well, that's exactly the issue, right? It forces us to confront this massive methodological collision.
Yeah.
We are essentially witnessing the friction between cutting-edge, space-based remote sensing and the very traditional, dirt under the fingernails reality of classical archaeology.
Right, because evaluating claims of hidden ancient megastructures.
Yeah, it requires us to carefully separate the hard data from these dazzling 3D reconstructions that, let's be honest, tend to take on a life of their own.
They really do. And to do that properly, we kind of have to look closely at who is organizing this information for us in the first place.
Right, Astra Obscura.
Exactly, because Astra Obscura, they're not some standard news outlet churning out daily clickbait headlines.
No, not at all.
They describe their operational territory as the edges of accepted stories.
Which is such a fascinating way to put it.
It is. They intentionally focus on anomalies, witness accounts, and those outliers in the data that just refuse to fit neatly into the consensus narratives of our history books.
And crucially, they maintain absolute structural independence.
Right.
Like they operate without any institutional backing or commercial sponsorships whatsoever.
Which means there's no underlying pressure to, produce a viral documentary or sell a definitive conclusion to an eagle
Yeah,
audience.
exactly. Their stated manifesto actually revolves around documenting questions with extreme care. They're guided by this principle that, and I love this quote, silence is sometimes more honest than certainty.
Wow, yeah. It's like they function as this profoundly meticulous detective.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Like the kind of investigator who catalogs every stray fiber, every single scuff mark, every fingerprint at a scene, but flatly refuses to name a suspect just to close the case.
Right. They value the signal over the noise. So when the evidence is empirical, they cite it.
Mhm.
But when they present speculation, it is clearly flagged as such.
Yeah, so because of that notoriously cautious approach, when Astra Obscura dedicates an entire series to a specific anomaly, we really need to pay attention.
Exactly. The detective has essentially found a footprint that simply cannot belong to the accepted cast of characters.
And that footprint was unveiled at that wild 2025 press conference in Italy.
Right. And this was not just some fringe gathering,
No, not at all.
You had a really rare collision of disciplines here. There were radar engineers teaming up with traditional Egyptologists.
Yeah, like Professor Corrado Malanga from the University of Pisa, right? He directed the research.
Yes. And Fliv Bayandi handled the highly complex radar engineering side of things.
Well, Armando May provided the Egyptological context.
Right. And Nicole Cicalo managed the project's communications.
Okay, so the technological foundation of their claim, it rests on satellite-acquired radar data.
Specifically, a technique called SAR Doppler tomography.
Right.
And they basically use this data to construct these three-dimensional models of the subsurface environment beneath the Giza Plateau.
And this wasn't totally out of nowhere, right?
No, it was actually a methodological escalation from a 2022 peer-reviewed paper. In that one, Biondi and Malanga use similar remote sensing techniques to examine internal anomalies within the Great Pyramid of Khufu.
Okay, but wait, I have to push back here for a second.
Sure.
Because examining a void inside a known standing structure is fundamentally different from claiming you have mapped a buried city.
Completely different.
I mean, think about the physical reality here. So they didn't even set foot in Egypt for this phase. No physical digging.
Physical digging.
How can they possibly claim to have found structures belonging to an, unknown civilization purely from space radar? If you've ever struggled to get a clear Wi-Fi signal just because you walked behind a concrete wall in your basement, you know how hard it is for waves to penetrate solid matter.
That is a very valid point.
And they're claiming to read signals bouncing back from thousands of feet deep through solid, dense limestone bedrock from a satellite orbiting the Earth.
Right. It requires an absolutely incredible leap in data processing.
Mm-hmm.
So to understand how they even attempt this, we need to look at what SAR actually is.
Okay, lay it on me.
Synthetic aperture radar, or SAR, uses the forward motion of the satellite itself to basically simulate an absolutely massive antenna.
Right.
As it flies over the target, it fires these rapid radar pulses down to the Earth. And yeah, most of that energy bounces right off the surface, but a tiny fraction of it actually penetrates the ground.
And that is where the Doppler tomography comes in, I assume.
Precisely. As the signal travels through different materials, so whether that's sand, solid limestone, or an empty void, the frequency of the wave changes slightly.
Okay.
The Doppler shift measures those minute variations. Tomography then takes those flat, two-dimensional slices of returning data and layers them together to build a 3D model.
Kind of like a medical MRI.
Functionally, very similar. An MRI uses magnetic fields and radio waves to create a 3D map of the inside of your body without, making a single incision.
Right, but that actually brings us to the core of the controversy here,
Yeah.
because a medical MRI is looking for known biological structures.
Ah, exactly.
This team used their space-based MRI to leap from just identifying anomalous density variations in the bedrock to explicitly claiming they had found an artificial megastructure built by an unknown ancient civilization.
Yeah, and that is where interpreting radar returns becomes a very subjective science.
Right.
Look, non-invasive tools are absolutely revolutionizing archaeology. We saw this recently with myography, which uses the scattering of cosmic rays to map internal voids.
Oh, yeah. They successfully identified that hidden corridor in the Great Pyramid with that.
Exactly. But those tools are empirically verified, making the massive leap from a remote radar anomaly to basically handing out an architectural blueprint of an unknown civilization. That is exactly where the established scientific community draws a hard line.
Well, let's actually look at those architectural blueprints,
Well-
because the 3 schematics you provided from the Astra Obscura file, they are just staggering.
They really are.
The radar data didn't just map, a few hidden caves. The models depict a highly organized underground system that is exponentially larger than the monuments sitting on the surface.
Yeah, we are looking at an overall footprint potentially 10 times larger than the pyramids themselves.
10 times. So run us through the specific dimensions extracted from this SAR Doppler data, because it kind of defies conventional understanding of ancient engineering.
It really does. So the first schematic details 5 distinct multi-level structures, and these are situated deep near the bases of the surface pyramids. The data models suggest each of these structures contains 5 horizontal levels, and they're topped with these distinct sloping roofs, all interconnected by geometric passageways.
Okay, so the scale of that alone pushes the boundaries of geology. But the second schematic, this is the one that truly bends the mind.
Oh, it's shafts.
Yes. It details a series of 8 vertical cylindrical shafts arranged in 2 parallel groups of 4.
And according to the radar returns, these shafts plunge 2,100 feet. That's 648 meters straight down into the solid bedrock of the plateau.
2,100 feet. I mean, that's taking a skyscraper the size of the Burj Khalifa and burying it upside down in solid bedrock.
Exactly. To contextualize that depth, standard bedrock foundation piles for modern super-tall skyscrapers rarely exceed 300 feet.
Wow.
So we are talking about a sheer drop 7 times that depth, bored through one of the densest limestone shelves on the planet.
And the models don't just show, smooth tubes, do they?
No. The radar data indicates these 2,100-foot shafts are actually wrapped in spiral ramps or stair-like features.
Unbelievable.
It essentially creates these continuous access routes winding all the way down to the deepest levels.
But you don't build a 2,100-foot spiral ramp into solid bedrock just for the engineering exercise.
No, you definitely don't.
The data implies these shafts are acting as a massive funnel, driving straight down to a destination. And that third schematic reveals what sits at the bottom of that drop.
Right. The shafts converge on two massive hollow cubic chambers.
And the dimensions of these lower chambers, I mean, they are almost impossible to reconcile with ancient construction methods.
Totally. The radar anomalies suggest each cube measures roughly 80 meters on every side.
That is 260 feet of empty space.
Per chamber.
That is an entire city block hollowed out half a mile underground.
Yeah.
Just think about the sheer volume of material that implies. You can't just carve out a 260-foot cavern and 100 feet of access shafts without leaving behind mountains of excavated limestone spoil.
Exactly. Yeah. And more importantly, creating a void that large at that depth without the immense weight of the Giza Plateau just collapsing in on itself, that requires structural reinforcement technology that rivals or honestly exceeds modern capabilities.
Right, which naturally leads to the expectation that, hey, an international coalition of archaeologists would immediately converge on the site, right?
I would think so.
Bringing ground-penetrating radar, seismic sensors, and drilling equipment to verify these claims.
But the reality on the ground is a total institutional lockdown.
The door is firmly bolted.
Completely. Following the explosive 2025 announcement, the Egyptian authorities issued a very unequivocal reality check.
Yeah, they said absolutely no new on-site missions, no physical excavations, and no ground-level sensor deployments were approved based on this satellite data.
And you have to understand the socio-political realities of managing one of the world's most vital heritage sites. It dictates a highly conservative approach. The Ministry of Antiquities requires rigorous, peer-reviewed proposals grounded in localized physical evidence before allowing invasive or even active, non-invasive exploration of the plateau.
And a dramatic press conference based on proprietary satellite algorithms. Well, that does not meet that threshold.
Not at all, which creates this fascinating and honestly frustrating scientific gridlock.
Yeah. On one side of the globe, you have researchers wielding this cutting-edge remote data capable of seeing through the Earth.
And on the other side, you have the physical gatekeepers of the dirt, protecting the site from wild goose chases.
And right in the middle, you have the internet.
Oh, yes. The digital amplification of this story highlights a profound danger in how we consume scientific information today.
It really does.
Astra Obscura actually specifically notes how the nuance of the research just evaporated the moment it hit social media.
Right, because you see a beautifully rendered 3D animation of a 2,100-foot spiral staircase on a YouTube thumbnail, and your brain just processes it as an established physical fact.
Exactly. The complex translation of Doppler shifts and radar pulses is entirely lost.
The public isn't told, a computer algorithm interpreted an anomaly in the density of the bedrock as potentially possessing spiral characteristics.
No, they are simply told scientists found a hidden staircase.
Yeah. It creates this intense friction between the public's demand for rapid, paradigm-shifting discovery and the slow, methodical, deeply regulated reality of traditional archaeology.
The remote data dazzles millions, but without physical ground sensors, without actually drilling a core sample or dropping a fiber optic camera down a fissure, the scientific reality remains entirely unverified.
Okay, so faced with this impenetrable gridlock between the dazzling digital models and the locked physical gates of Giza, Astra Obscura does something highly unusual for a data-driven investigative site.
They certainly do.
They pull out a deck of tarot cards.
No, they do. And they also utilize horary astrology.
Which, why include magic cards and star charts in a scientific investigation?
It seems wild at first glance.
But when you actually read their reasoning, it makes sense. Because these tools perfectly frame the human element of the mystery.
Exactly. To understand why an investigative platform would deploy esoteric tools to evaluate satellite radar data, we have to look back at their core philosophy.
Right.
They aren't casting star charts to divine the physical composition of the limestone bedrock.
No.
They are using these symbolic systems as a psychological diagnostic tool. They are mapping the human element of the gridlock, the frustration, the stalled progress, and the tension between the researchers and the authorities.
The cards basically act as a mirror for the state of the investigation itself.
Precisely. If we examine the specific 5-card tarot spread they documented, the narrative of the scientific standoff becomes remarkably clear.
Okay, walk us through the spread.
So the first card, representing the visible claim, basically the dramatic press conference itself, was the Wheel of Fortune, drawn reversed.
Meaning the Great Wheel is jammed.
Exactly. The massive announcement generated intense public momentum, but it failed to rotate the story forward into the accepted scientific consensus. The mechanism of discovery is stuck in the mud.
Wow. Okay. What was the next one?
To represent the hidden substrate of the issue, they drew the sun, also reversed.
So the light is present, but it is eclipsed.
Yes, the underlying truth is currently filtered or obscured by layers of Earth, or perhaps by the opaque layers of the radar technology itself. We have the data models, but we lack the empirical illumination of physical proof.
Which sets up the core tension perfectly, represented by the third card, the 5 of discs, drawn upright.
Right, and in the language of tarot, this card signifies material exclusion. It is the archetype of being left out in the cold.
Which is a strikingly accurate reflection of the geopolitical reality these researchers face.
It really is. They hold what they believe to be revolutionary technological keys, yet they are physically, literally locked out of the lighted temple of conventional archaeology. The authorities will not allow them onto the sand.
Okay, what about the fourth card?
The fourth card, representing the potential for revelation, was art or temperance, drawn reversed.
Oh, highlighting the strained alchemical marriage at the center of the story.
Yes, the friction between space-age remote sensing and the physical dirt of the Earth. The friction between outlier interpretive models and consensus reality.
And how does it resolve?
The spread concludes with a guiding principle. The Prince of Discs, drawn upright.
Okay, meaning what?
This archetype counsels patient, methodical husbandry of the Earth. It advises advancing slowly, relying on reliable, grounded mapping and repeated verification, rather than demanding immediate, spectacular vindication.
Well, that is a fascinating alignment with Astra Obscura's own manifesto, right? Silence and careful observation over rushed certainty.
Exactly. And they reinforce this exact counsel by casting a Herrerian astrology chart for the precise moment this line of inquiry began.
Which they meticulously documented as exactly May 3, 2026 at 10:04 p.m. EDT.
Right. And that astrological chart echoed the Prince of Discs flawlessly. Yeah. It emphasized restrained motion and the presence of hidden matters. It explicitly counseled patience and meticulous verification before any final judgment is rendered.
So again, the stars and cards aren't predicting what's physically underground. They are analyzing the tense, stalled state of the investigation itself.
They're defining the required temperament of the investigators.
Which brings us to why this deep dive matters to you, the listener, as you navigate an increasingly complex information landscape.
Because regardless of whether this massive radar anomaly is eventually proven to be the greatest architectural discovery in human history.
Or, if it turns out to be a massive misinterpretation of natural geological fractures by an overtuned algorithm.
It demonstrates something vital.
Modern technology is relentlessly forcing us to constantly reevaluate the edges of accepted history.
It demands a highly difficult cognitive balance from all of us.
It does. We must remain open to the very real possibility that our understanding of the past is vastly incomplete, while simultaneously demanding rigorous physical standards of proof before we just go and rewrite the textbooks.
We have covered incredible ground today.
We really have. We traversed a massive claim of a subterranean complex. We looked at the collision of space-based SAR Doppler tomography and ancient limestone.
We mapped out the dizzying scale of 2,100-foot shafts and 80-meter subterranean cubes.
We analyzed the fierce scientific standoff between remote data and institutional gatekeepers. And we saw how esoteric tools like tarot can perfectly frame the psychology of a stalled scientific process.
All carefully documented by a platform that values patient observation over rushed conclusions. It truly is a masterclass in separating the signal from the noise in the digital age.
But before we wrap up, there is one final, incredibly strange detail buried in the sources you brought us that requires your attention.
Oh, the interconnecting tunnels.
Yes. When detailing the structural components found in the radar data, alongside the cubic chambers and those massive shafts, the researchers noted the presence of interconnecting tunnels described specifically as pipeline-like channels.
Right, and the model suggests these might represent ancient water or utility systems.
A utility system operating on a scale that defies logical comprehension.
Completely.
Consider the full picture of those dimensions one last time. If those structures are real, you have two massive empty cubic chambers, each the size of a city block, sitting half a mile beneath the earth.
You have 8 vertical shafts dropping 2,100 feet straight down, acting as funnels.
So if those pipeline channels are actually utilities, what exactly was an unknown ancient civilization powering, draining, or pumping on a scale 10 times larger than the Great Pyramid sitting on the surface above them?
It's a terrifying and thrilling question.
It really is. Let that rattle around in your mind. Because the answer isn't written in the stars or hidden in a deck of cards. It is half a mile straight down, waiting in the dark.